Next slide. Maybe to show you in more detail. Under the Vestas Technology R&D, we have 3 different departments. We have the global research, where I'm located under, and we have an office here in Singapore. So what global research does is we are looking ahead, 3-5 years down the road for future products. I'm not the guy who's going to worry about, okay, we have a production problem, we need to fix that problem. That's not my role. For me, it's like I'm looking down ahead. Okay, how can we make the turbine lighter? How can we make it bigger? Which technologies are new in the market, and which technologies could actually be interesting and implementable to our future products? So that's our role. Maybe you can do one. Can you click one? So we are purely working on the research aspect, where we have a department called Engineering and Products, and they deal with the day-to-day problems in the production. And they are more focused on the development. So for my work, I'm working in the materials team, and I'm working on the composites. So if for example, I come to NTU, I go to the lab, and Professor Freddie Boyce tell me, Owen, I have this great invention, this great technology, it will work for you. So what I will do is that I will have a look at it. Maybe I start a project with Freddie and say, okay, let's demonstrate this technology on a lab scale. See how much percentage improvement can we get for this material compared to the existing products that we're using. After we've shown that it's not enough in a company, you'll find out there are always people say, how much does it cost? How much added value does it give me? How much money do I need to pump in to make this technology work? If you have a positive performance increase and a positive business case, then people become interested to apply technology. So that's mostly how we work. So it can be quite frustrating sometimes, because you know that this is the right technology, but people simply doesn't adopt it because you can't justify the business case. Once you have a positive technology, so you have something new which works and looks very potential, then what we do is we recommend it to the engineering and products department, and those are the guys that go to the big scale. Here in Singapore, we don't work with big plates. Everything is in coupon level, or maybe a small prototype. But these are the guys that bring it to the field and try it out on a big scale to see whether the results that you obtain in the lab are still applicable to the field. And then we also still have a department called operations, and they deal with the actual operation of the turbine. If you have a lightning strike, if you have other problems, those are the guys that address it. Next slide. Okay, to give you a feeling of what kind of research we could be doing is, we work a lot with composites. These blades that I'll show you later are actually made of fiber reinforced composites. If you read the literature, actually, wind energy is one of the biggest users of fiber composites in the world, in particular carbon fibers. We're even bigger than aerospace. Also, what we work on is bonding and adhesives. Bonding is because this blade is actually made of 2 shells. So by bonding them together, you need a lot of adhesives on the bonds. For example, here, where you need adhesives. So we do a lot of research on that to make sure that the bond lines don't pop open after a few years, where you get those bananas. We don't want that to happen. And also what we work on is a lot of computational fluid dynamics. Because we work with blades, and actually it's just like airfoil, like aerospace, aircraft wing. So we can do a lot of optimization work and see how much turbulence do we have, how much noise do we generate. Maybe next slide. I think it's more, as I say, interesting for you guys to talk about materials. And I put this slide in just to give you a perspective of how fast this market is growing. When we worked in 1981, we had the V50, so it's a 15-meter diameter. That was 1981. Currently, I haven't updated, but we're working on the V112. So you can see this growth is growing very rapidly. And that's where the material research has to keep up. How can we make it bigger and bigger? Because if you work with certain materials, you find out at a certain time you run out of growth. So you have to find the next step. And at the same time, people want it cheaper and cheaper. So, obviously people say, okay, you're using a low modulus carbon fiber, pick a high one, pick a high modulus carbon fiber, solve your problem, you can double the length of your blade. But then, that high modulus carbon fiber is maybe 5-10 times more expensive. So there's no way people will address it. So, while making it bigger, you have to drive down the cost of energy, and that's what the material science has to address. Is it materials? Is it different materials? Is it nanotechnology? That's what the research has addressed. Next slide. These are some of the areas where you can look into to bring down this cost of energy. You can reduce the loads on your blades in different ways by pitching the blades. You can increase the power of the turbine. So with the same turbine, you harness more power. For example, by getting bigger blades. Of course, bringing down the weight has a lot of advantages. Because if your blades are lower weight, it means your bearings don't have to be that strong. Transport is much easier. You can probably do with a shorter crane. And coming back again, reliability should be up. So those are the four focal points that your material research needs to address in order to bring down the cost of energy. And the more you can bring it down, the more people get interested. Next slide. So I thought the same pictures just now. So how can material science and engineering help to break this cost of energy curve? Next slide. Maybe just to give you a brief overview, people always ask me, are you only working on polymer materials because our plates are made of fiberglass? We are the only one actually with another competitor who use carbon fiber. Because our designs are very much optimized that we are able to use carbon fibers. They're much more expensive than glass fibers, but we are able to justify this cost increase. So at strategic location, we use carbon fiber and we use epoxy as the resin. Besides that, we use polyurethane for the bond lines, and we use foam materials like PVC foam, PET foams at locations where you want to keep your laminate thick but yet lightweight. The foam is just to give it additional torsion stiffness. Besides that, these are all the polymer materials. We use cast iron in the hub, and we also use a lot of steel in the tower. So not only polymer materials, also metals are widely used in wind turbines. So if your research area is focusing towards metals, it's still applicable to our area. And besides that, also we use a lot of lubricants. We have gearboxes, we have bearings, so we use oils, we use greases. There's a lot of other metals inside, like bearing steels and other steels. That's about it. Next time. So, where material research can contribute, for example, if you want to increase the specific strength of components, of materials, if you increase the specific strength means you can actually make it stronger while making it lighter, and that's very attractive. As I mentioned a few times, increasing the blade length is most important because that's directly related to the power output of your turbine. So maybe if you want to introduce carbon nanotubes in your resins and increase the blades by 10-20 meters, that will be quite attractive for us. Of course, always cost is important. If I have one component that costs $50, but I have another material, the same specs, costs $45, it's interesting because the less money you use, the more competitive your product becomes. Well, of course, providing that the specs are the same, and that's often the key. This is also more and more becoming an interesting area. With the nanotechnology introduction, there's a lot of functionality coming into turbines as well. And maybe I can give you some things to think about, what could be interesting maybe in the next slides. And the last one also is, you can think about reducing wear and tear of components, of your mechanical components, for example, in the gearbox, in the bearings. If you can delay the wear, reduce the wear rate, then it becomes interesting because, the service guy doesn't need to go up so often, maybe not every 6 months, maybe every 12 months. So you delay the maintenance period, and that can save you a lot of money as well. Next slide. So here more specific for materials, for the blades, for example, what you can think about is, you know, de-icing. I showed you the picture in Sweden. If you operate in cold countries, you know, you often get ice accretion on the blades. And once you get ice on the blades, that actually affects your aerodynamics. And once it affects your aerodynamics, then your power production goes down, so your customer will complain. Or in worst case, if the ice gets so big, they have to shut down the turbine and they can't even operate. So, you know, the market is looking into developing coatings or other technologies to actually keep them ice-free. Of course, self-cleaning goes in the same area. You know, if you can keep bugs and dirt off your blades, you will have a maximum optimization of your aerodynamic performance. You know, people are talking about self-healing, I think. If you're familiar with the area, it's quite straightforward. Then in the bearings and gears, we work with sealants, lubricants. We do a lot of electronics also. Also in Singapore, we have an electronics department who work on the generators, do EMI shielding. And you can imagine that, you know, corrosion might also a big issue, especially for the tower, if you put them offshore. Next slide. Okay, in specific or for coatings, there's a lot of research going on into the wind energy. If you look at this picture, we're actually erecting turbines all over the world and in different environments. So it could be, for example, in the desert in Egypt, where you have a lot of sand particles in the wind, and these sand particles might erode your paint coating. You know, and once your paint erodes, that means the environment can actually degrade your composite. So you can look into development of these kinds of coatings. At the same time, for the offshore, you know, there could be a lot of water ingress into your composites. So you could think of coatings in that area. As I mentioned, cold countries, and this one also is quite interesting. And that's more for plain areas, not flatlands. You can imagine that if you have a structure here of, this is about 100 meters, so you add another 40 meters, 145, 150 meters in the air, you have a structure standing there. If the lightning comes, I can guarantee you it will hit the blades. So material research is very important to develop a good lighting system, because maybe you can take it hit maybe 1 or 2 times, but if it happens 2, 3, 4, 5 times, there's a high risk that your blades will burn and damage, and there's a lot of unhappiness with the customer. So material research could address those kind of areas. Maybe quickly, I can go next slide. I mean, if I go in more detail, I don't want to go into too much detail, but just to give you a feeling, you know, if you talk about anti-icing coatings, it's mostly based on super hydrophobic coatings, which you want to apply into your blade so that, you know, water just rolls off the blade, ice doesn't stick. Maybe next slide. For example, the offshore, what you can think about, maybe in your research, you know, if you add, for example, nanoclays into epoxy resins, you can actually form a barrier property in your epoxy resin, which could actually help your turbines to prevent water ingress. Because once the water goes in, your stiffness drops, and once the stiffness of the blade drops, you know, you might get a tower strike, and that might destroy the whole turbine. Maybe next slide. If you go to the lighting, you can see here some of the damages that we see in the field once it's hit by lightning. Because this is about 200,000 amps, once it hit your blade, it wants to find its way down to the earth. So you need to have some kind of conducting system in your blade. And mostly we use like copper materials. But you know, carbon nanotubes, the conductivity is much higher, but it's not easy to introduce that into the blades. And I think that's something in general for nanotechnology. You know, it's easy to show things in the lab scale, but how about on a 44-meter scale or 54 scale nowadays? You know, you introduce a lot of difficulties. You know, instead of your beaker, your 100-milliliter beaker, you have a tank of 100 liters. You know, how do your particles behave? Do they settle down after